Hey, man, it's a sneak peek at our Dukes and Bell show today. We call it Behind the Curtain. Today, we got a special guest in for Carl. Carl's vacation eventually will end. We believe it is Tuesday. He'll be back to work. But we got Dave Archer, my old compadre from my days at 790. And, of course, you hear Dave on the Falcons radio network and on all the shows in 92.9. So who better than Arch to talk about the things that worked great last night down in Tampa? Inexplicably, with the season now over, Kyle Pitts has the greatest game of his life. That's Day. Damian Lewis, our producer, the brains of the operation. We're going to be down in College Park or up in College Park, depending on where you live. We're going to be at the Gateway Arena. The Skyhawks are in action tonight, and every year we at least do one game down there. You sometimes see Carl doing Peachtree TV broadcasts of the Skyhawks. But we'll be down there for a 7 o'clock tip. Come by and see me and Arch if you're down on the south side. But 2 to 6:30 today as we get you ready for that. And we'll have plenty to talk about with the Falcons, college football, with Mike Griffith on the Dogs, Bryant McFadden as we go around the NFL as it's kind of nut-cutting time for the playoffs. But obviously we start with the Falcons, Day. And, where do you begin? This gets us to the conversation. We've probably spent more time on Kyle Pitts the last 5 years than any other Falcon. And this is what we expected when you drafted him. And some would say this is what happens when he has a really good quarterback delivering the football consistently.
Yeah, and it's funny, too. The one thing I also thought about is when it comes to this series this season, you bookended, a field goal at the beginning of the year. You miss one that doesn't allow you to send the game into overtime, and then you close out the season series with the Bucs with a walk-off field goal. So how about that? But, yeah, man, Kyle Pitts, man, honestly, look, he knows that he's at a critical point in his career with his free agency coming up. At this point, and it makes no sense for him not to kind of step up. I hate the fact that, we're having this conversation and there's so much other things that we got to question about this team as we start to move towards the offseason, and he's kind of in the mix of that. But at the end of the day, we needed him. We talked about who's going to step up in the passing game. And shout out to David Seals. David Seals with an amazing catch to extend that drive to get them to the point to where they could kick that field goal.
Sills reminds me of a young Mike Evans. We saw Mike Evans come back from injury, make some unbelievable catches, and schooling at times Kobe Bryant. Kobe Bryant also dropped him on his butt, but it was a tough day for A.J. Terrell. We'll get into the secondary in a second. But I thought last night, Sills, kind of like our wide receiver core, he drops an easy catch and he makes the impossible catch. Right. And that's kind of what we've been since we lost Drake London and Ray McLeod. But last night, it was about Kyle Pitts. Kyle Pitts in the red zone. Kyle Pitts with yards after the catch. Kyle Pitts doing all the stuff he's supposed to be as the 4th overall pick. And now I hear guys today, it's so funny on social media, we got to franchise tag him. Okay. Here's the funny thing. Dady just touched on it. With a few more catches, this guy can be right up there with the top 3. Statistically, he's just 3 yards behind all the elites for 800 yards, the guys we consider the best tight ends in the business. All of a sudden, he's got 4 touchdowns after having 1. And you can say it's Tampa Bay. You take his 2 games in Tampa Bay, last year in October and this game, he's got 5 touchdowns against Tampa Bay on the road at Raymond James. Yeah. And as he said, and Bijan said, something about that Florida air, man, it agrees with him. But getting back to Cousins, this is why it is so exasperating to be a Falcons fan. Because this is what this team should look like, even with a big key component like Drake London out. You have the ability to have Kyle Pitts take over the game. We were begging for this earlier in the year when Drake got hurt earlier in the year, when Mooney wasn't able to go because of the collarbone. So Pitts, and we've said this to him, bro, he is an exasperating player because you see the skills, and then sometimes you feel, I think personally as a fan, he checks out. And then when he's engaged and you get the ball to him like last night, he makes things happen. But there's no excuse for all the other drops earlier in the year, like the Berlin game for a touchdown or the Patriots or any other game where you're like, why can't he make that play and fight and use his athleticism to make the catch? Bijan was great last night. Tons of yards from scrimmage, leading the NFL in yards from scrimmage. I like the mix of Zach Robinson. Now, I know that the Bucs were banged up on defense. They couldn't generate a lot of pass rush. They still got after Kirk Cousins. I thought he did a hell of a job.
Yeah. And going back to Pitts, man, it goes back to what I said. I know his numbers haven't been phenomenal in terms of, catching yards and touchdowns, but overall, he's still been the most reliable. And I know people always, every time I say this, people say, what do you mean? What do you mean? He's always dropping. Sure, I get it. He's dropping, some key passes, but when it comes down to his percentage rate as far as catches to targets, he's barely dropped more than 50% of his targets. So he's
Right.
kind of still been the most reliable from that standpoint. So we just needed the breakout games from him, and we finally got one. I mean,
Right.
and it was beyond breakout. The first tight end in NFL history since Shannon Sharp to record 150 plus yards and 3 TDs in a game.
You can't make this stuff up. And again, Murphy's Law, the season's over. Now we get the game of Kyle Pitts' life. So, look, he was drafted by this general manager. If this general manager retains his position, perhaps they'll consider it because Murphy's Law, Day just touched on it. He has just jumped up to right behind the best tight end statistically in the NFL, which is Trey McBride. A lot of us have him as our fantasy tight end. He's right behind him in touchdowns. He's third right now in receptions from the tight end position, second in yards. So, and I saw a bunch of tweets from guys who cover the NFL nationally, and they're like, holy cow, Kyle Pitts just put on a highlight tape for his free agency. So You can't make this up. He bookends it with exactly what you want. In his defense, he was hurt. He got hurt the second year, and he was never right in his third year. And that's something we talked about with Arthur Smith. Last year, he was, statistically okay, but you just remember the moments as J-Day just laid out for him to lay out and make that tough catch. Either way, Pitts is on everybody's lips right now, and we'll get into it with Dave Archer today on the show, and we'll talk about Kirk Cousins. Cousins had a monster day, 373 yards, 3 touchdowns. He may be the NFC Offensive Player of the Week, depending on what the other quarterbacks do this week in the NFL, and that would make 3 of those all against the Bucs the last 2 seasons. And to Day-Day's point, if they don't screw up the kicker position and find somebody better than Koo, who knows? We may have won week 1. I said it to Raheem Morris. He wasn't going to take the bait, but he kind of intimated, it kind of sets the tone a little differently if we get off to a 2-0 start.
Yeah. And to your point, like you said, Kirk Cousins not only owning Tampa Bay in his 3 games against them, but he's somebody else that last night might have been putting on auditioning for some teams out there. Because if we're honest, up until last night, as far as if the Falcons cut him, he's not that attractive. But I will say this too. He might have also just kind of showed the Falcons like, we may have to sit down at the table at the end of this thing and figure things out because we don't have a quarterback to start 2026.
No, that's the thing. You get a win like that, and amazing. First off, I hate going for 2. I know analytics. You play the NFL game
like that.
For 100 years. You just, all right, you know what? We kicked the extra point.
Yeah.
And no, here, what do? You got to start chasing points because the analytics book says it. It's bullshit. I'm sorry. There's a place for analytics in Major League Baseball because it's a much, much greater sample size. Trying to shoehorn analytics in the NFL, it wears me out. But they went for it. Now, again, had we lost the game, we have another thing to be bellyaching about Raheem for. I will still break his balls on this next week when we're up at Falcons headquarters. But we get the dub. And look, we don't apologize for wins here, okay? I'd rather watch. I spent my hard-earned money to watch this team this year like everybody else. I want to see us win and beat a division rival like Tampa. And all of a sudden you got, if you didn't see it, man, man, Coach Todd Bowles, blanking this, blanking that, blankety blank. I mean, he was hot and salty. Yeah. And meanwhile, we had some great things happening. Unfortunately for the defense, we could have had 7 sacks. It's the most penalized this team has been in like forever. It was insane. A.J. Terrell had a brutal day at the office. He was grabbing. I thought one was ticky-tack. I thought the other fouls were legit. And then the holding penalties, like the one on Jake, it was such ticky-tack bullshit by the refs, slowed the process of the game down. And then all of a sudden, late in the game, the worm turned, and we started getting some calls. I thought the Pitts review, I wasn't sure we're going to get that touchdown when his ass hit first and his elbow.
No,
know the difference between an ass and their elbow. How about the Mike Evans catch, which they ruled a catch? I couldn't believe that was a catch. So the refs are all over the place. What do you think?
Yeah. Nah, man, you're right. And you know what? The main thing I took away last night, Mike, I don't know if you remember yesterday when we got on, you said, what do I want to see from this team? And I said, I just want to see them fight. I don't care what the outcome is. I just want to see them fight. I want to be able to watch the game and say, you know what, they lost, but the effort was there. And my gosh, man, if you had told me they were going to have 111 yards in lost in sacks and lost yardage, the amount of penalties that they had for lost yards, and then be able to on that final drive looked like they were just going to get put way out, which they were out of field goal range, and then still be able to come up with the 2 big catches, one by Pitts, one by Seals, and win that game. I'd have been like, no way. But that's what we wanted. We wanted to see them fight. There's no way that you look at those negative statistic numbers and say the Falcons won that game. But that just goes to show that they fought, they wanted it, they rallied together. And they, shout out to Zach Robinson for being able to put together a drive on that final drive to get them in field goal range. So that's really
the defense for getting the stop, and the defense for getting the stop too. To set it up.
Yeah.
And look, Baker, he was just hot because they blew a 28-14 lead, and we battled back, and it's all the things that you want to see, a fight for your team. Remember, we talked yesterday. You had like 36 hours of all these weird tweets and social media and guys liking stuff and questioning, like, what does that mean? Are they questioning the tactics? Are they questioning the leadership? Who cares? We put it together, and nothing solves all your family's troubles like a big W last night down in Tampa Bay. So questions about the offseason, we'll put it to you guys. What do you want to do? The Pitts mandate today. We'll get your reaction. Again, Dave Archer will be filling in today. We'll be at College Park at the Gateway Arena getting ready for Skyhawks. Bryant McFadden on the entire NFL weekend. The NFC playoff picture, man. See, that's what makes me more aggravated. If we didn't screw around with the 5-game losing streak and some of the decisions and some of the plays that weren't made, we're in this space. This division, 9-8 can win this division. And we'd be right there.
Right there. Yeah, man. What are we? 5 and 9. 5-9, and we know for sure 3 games we easily could have won if we had made some stops and or the potential one at, like you said, at the beginning of the year. So it is very frustrating, but at this point, there's nothing we can do about it. Let me ask you this, because I know we got to go. We heard yesterday, I think it was Ian Rappaport during the pregame say, from what he's hearing, we've been talking about wanting to hear from Arthur Blank, saying that from what he's hearing, that Arthur Blank has already made it clear that he's waiting until the end of the season. Then he's going to evaluate everything from coaching staff to front office personnel. What do you think about that? What do you think last night's performance does for this team in regards to that?
I always say, these guys don't listen to the show. They don't listen to what's going on. Carlos says, everybody listens. They hear. So through back channels, the message gets out. So I said, do you release a statement? I was arguing with Bo Morgan from the morning shift earlier in the week when he's filling in for Carl. He's like, what does that accomplish? What do you want to hear? What, you want Arthur to be Jerry Jones and popping off? This is what I wanted, and you got it. Back channels to somebody in the NFL media that, we're going to evaluate. No blank Sherlock, right? But okay. And then the other thing last night, I get it. I think we've gone past canceled culture, but those people that are easily offended got offended by Bijan's comments. A phrase, smear the blank, that we all used as kids on the playground. We know it's not appropriate. Bijan apologized. He's a good guy. He's got a big heart, and he's a man of faith, and he made a mistake, and it's not a federal frigging case. So let's get off his back. And anybody who wants to dwell on that, you're just some idiot on social media, and you're a person who wakes up every morning looking to be offended by something. But that aside, we'll get into some of that, because people do in today's day overreact. But otherwise, a crazy game. A win for the Falcons, which in some cases leaves us with more questions than answers about the offseason. Today, 2 to 6:30, extra half hour. We let Archer sleep in. They got back on the plane about 4 o'clock this morning to Hartsfield, but Dave Archer will be joining us today in for Carl. We'll see you today, guys, 2 o'clock on Dukes and Bell.